time to get back to it. I'm going to do my best in this episode, episode 2, to cover the 3-pole 550s. We, of course, have the Titan 21 turn, the Apex 27 turn, Trail Master Sport 27 turn, and then a Surpass 35 turn. So it will be interesting to see what a legit 27 turn compares to this. Of these 4, none of them are $20. We are, of course, bushings on these. The Holmes does indeed have bearings. So the Holmes is the only motor of this 4 on bearings, which should help. I think efficiency-wise, they'll all be pretty much the same. I feel like, just guessing here, the differential between the 4 is going to be much smaller than the differential in the 540s tested in episode 1. Should be the fastest, should be the slowest. I'm most curious to see how close these two are in terms of torque, drag brake, and driver feel. So in an effort to try to keep this one a little more brief, because we got 4 motors, I would like to keep it less than 10 minutes a motor. Luckily, I don't have to do the whole lead up to it. We're going to get this Titan mounted up and out onto the test apparatus. Just a quick note before I get this group into the testing phase. I will be pre-oiling them all with Liberty 100% synthetic, just to keep things even. And due to the design of and mounting of the Carisma gearbox, you might notice the Titan looks a little different. It absolutely will not fit without the torque sleeve. I don't know in this day and age how critical the torque sleeve is to the torque production of a 550 motor. I could space the gearbox up and space this up and probably could get it to fit. As you can see, this thing isn't really designed with a 550 in mind. There's no interference with the suspension, thankfully, but see up there at the top. So actually, even if I space it up, it wouldn't fit. So a 550 is not going to fit in here with a torque sleeve. It does give me the idea to try snapping a torque sleeve onto one of the cheap 540s and trying it, I guess, in another gearbox, because it's definitely not going to fit in here. So if anything, it will be equal. There are 7 550 motors. 6 of them have torque sleeves. The Root Dog does not. So none of them will be running with their torque sleeves, as they call them, because it's just never going to fit. All right, so on to the test. All right, first up on the day, the aforementioned Traxxas Titan 550 21 turn minus its torque sleeve. There we go. Must have had a little dirt loaded up in the tires there. Now see, I don't know if that's a torque sleeve issue or just the nature of this motor. It is a relatively low turn. Let's dial some trim into it and see what we get climbability wise. Having a hard time getting up on this morning. Trying to get this to hold steady. Actually requires a little more input to hold than the 540s, which, as I say, is that a sleeve issue or is that this motor? We're at 54 on the trim to hold, and it genuinely requires about 60 to get any sort of forward creep. Let's see what we get in terms of feel. I mean, I've driven a Titan before. It, you know, I always thought that it was purely an XL5 issue. Like, when you drive something stock Traxxas, XL5 and Titan, it always feels like it's more of an on-off switch than fine control with the motor. And I know if you put a Titan on a hobby wing, which is what's in here right now, it feels better. But it still feels like down at the bottom, the tip-in, the motor just wants to, like, you can't turn it at really low RPM. Like, you can't get that motor to turn, I don't know, it feels like sub 100 RPM. It's like a cheap 2-speed drill where it, like, starts at 100. Always on its wheels. So, once again, I mean, I understand of this group, if anything, the Titan is a basher motor at 21. I don't know, I can't recall what 21 equates to, 21 550, what it equates to in a 540 can. But this motor just feels like it has too much RPM. Doesn't feel that way in a Traxxas, because the Traxxas is pretty heavy. But it doesn't quite have the zoot of a Tamiya Sport Tuned, but I feel like that's too much. So I'm gonna move over here, take it around the 220, and see how it feels and how it runs on that. The Vanimal fitted with the Titan 21 turn runs the 220 in 23.27 seconds. A little slower than the hottest motor we've run so far, which was the Sport Tuned. Much louder motor than the Sport Tuned. It feels like more weight for no reason. Like, it has so much wheel speed. I guess it's wheel speed. There's I mean, it's got a much longer rotor than any 540. So it's got more torque, sleeve or no. It feels like too much. The Sport Tuned felt tame by comparison, and I don't mean torque wise, I mean RPM wise. This motor feels too sassy. I wish the torque sleeve would fit to get a real proper drag brake test. But I'm imagining there are quite a few gearboxes out there that if this one won't fit a torque sleeve, I'm guessing there are others that are the same condition. I mean, it still has, that's good drag brake. It holds really well. I mean, it's holding right there. So, 5 pound mark, no problem. It's not smooth enough. Like, basically, that's as low as you can go, right about there. And that's too fast. I want to be able to, I want to be able to go about half that fast. So I don't know if you would need much lower gearing. Maybe this is another, like the Sport Tuned would require like a 90 tooth spur, something to really gear it down. I'm going to have to look up what the final is on the Carisma, because I guess it's it's not, the low isn't low enough. So, nothing wrong at all with a Titan 21 turn. aside from it lacking the smoothness that I would like, just definitely too low of turn for this rig. So let's take it back in and bolt in, I think, the Apex. Apex up next. Here is the Apex 27 turn, probably available under many, many different Amazon importers, Google RC, Apex, Surpass, all of them. They all seem to be about the same. A small but pertinent note, this gearbox appears to be reverse rotation because most of the motors have to be wired up red to black, black to red, so backwards on the speed control. The Titan doesn't because it's a reverse rotation. The Apex does not as well. It is the correct color polarity, meaning that the Apex is also apparently a reverse rotation motor. Driving back here, it feels very smooth, I will say. And the drag brake, with no torque sleeve, significantly better than the Titan. Like, a lot. And it will hold at 38. So that's the torquiest we've seen yet. It will outgrip the tires. And what do we got to go to? Like 42. And I mean, it's slipping a little. Let's get it into a little more grip. Yeah, the torque, we're definitely getting into more my butter zone for torque. This is more what I want to see. Dial that back down to 0. I mean, that is a slow roll down. Let's pan this over. She rolls back. Let's see how she feels on slick rock. Now see, get some nice low wheel speed. This feels a good bit better to me than the Titan. Much more low speed control. And it's got bumpy zoots. Now let's check drag brake on the back rolling. See, I can live with that. That's a decent amount of hill hold. This one feels good. I'm not saying it feels sport tuned good. Let's check nose down drag brake. Well, I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Seems like the sweet spot for the Vanimal is around that, so far, is around that 27 turn. Whatever a 27 550 equates to in a 540, I'm going to guess 35, just going off of feel. Yeah, this one feels really good. It will be very interesting to see how the Holmes feels compared to this Apex. So let's loop it around the 220, see how it does speed-wise. Around the 220 in 35.17 seconds. About what you would expect. Yeah, definitely enough torque to hold without body weight. Yeah, that's just gluing it down. Let's roll back a little, try a little bump. Yeah, it's got an appreciable amount of bump to it. Getting hung up a little there. It's surprisingly smooth, particularly after running it back to back with the Titan. And I mean, take into consideration the times around the 220 are all on 4.19 inch class 1 tires. So tire diameter makes a big difference in top speed. If this guy had some, you put some hunks on there, and it would have been running sub 20 with the sport tune. That's also another consideration that I probably failed to point out. When you have a tire this small, you can really get away with higher turns. Yeah, this guy, I would say, not quite as smooth as the sport tune, but the overall feel of it, I think, is the best so far. Going to be very interesting to see how the Holmes does compared to the Apex, which, I mean, now we're really nickel and diming because I think the Trail Master is around $20, $21. I'll double check. And this one was 12 or 13, if memory serves. Very cheap. So we will see. We'll see what that $7 gets you. Here now, heading to the apparatus, the Holmes Trail Master Sport 27 turn. Hello, Jeej. In the spirit of fair testing, the torque sleeve was removed. And while I was removing it, I noticed that the torque sleeve is almost half the thickness of the ones on all the other motors. It is 0.75 millimeters thick compared to around 1.3, 1.4 millimeters for the sleeves on the other motors. So potentially it could fit. So I'm kind of making a mental note. In probably the wrap-up episode of this, I will be testing things like what happens if we put a 550 torque sleeve on a 540? Can we get more torque? Will it actually make more torque? Will it make no difference at all? And I would like to check to see if the torque sleeve will fit in this gearbox. If not, I think a 550 will fit pretty easily in the Stealth that's in the Banana. So the Banana might hop in to do some testing that the Carisma cannot do. I must have dragged dirt up onto the bottom of this because it's getting really difficult to get onto it. So without question, there's more torque in the Holmes than there was in the Apex. I don't know if I'm going to have to get the blower out and blow this thing off. All of a sudden it's really slippery. Or I'm wearing the wood fibers down. I don't know, one or the other. So real quick. Yeah. You want to talk about more torque? It's holding at 26. So it's not just talk. I mean, where do we get forward motion? Forward motion at 40. Some of the other motors tested so far will hold at 40. This will hold at 26 and move at 40. So there's definitely more forward torque in the Holmes. Dropping that back down. I mean, even at 0, that is a slow roll. And this is on slippery cedar, apparently slippery. So let's just pan over to Slick Rock and see how this thing feels. And I'm going to imagine that it's going to be pretty good. Yeah, very low speed control. Very controllable. Little body scratchers there. Let's try a little bump. Yeah. Yeah. It's not hype. It's well deserved. That it's every bit as smooth as the Apex. I would say smoother. Look at that low speed creep backwards there. See how the hill hold? Very good. Very good. I mean, it's sliding, but the wheels aren't turning, basically. Yeah, the hype and the good praise around the Holmes Trail Master Sport 27 turn are not misplaced. It's, unless the Surpass 35 turn turns out to be miraculous, this group, the win goes to the Trail Master for sure. At this point, we're just over halfway through the group. At this point, I don't think there's a better $20 you could spend. It's kind of a must to take it around the 220. So let's quickly get it around that and then get a little final thought on it. The Holmes Trail Master Sport 550 completes the 220 in 36.81 seconds. A little bit slower than the Apex 27 turn, but I have to say, I feel like the Holmes behaves more like a 27 turn 550. The Apex is like a 25 turn. The low speed control is, I mean, it's better. And the drag brake is a drag brake. This is the first motor tested so far that will just hold. And like I say, I think I might be able to get it to fit with the torque sleeve. And if it won't fit in this with the torque sleeve, I'm telling you right now, this motor's going in the banana. Because this motor's going in something. And I mean, you know, I have like 15 brushed motors now, and I think I have 4 rigs that are unbrushed, so I've definitely got some choices. So at this point, way out in the lead, Holmes, but by a lot. Like, I wouldn't consider the other two over this. So let's try the 35 turn. I don't expect miracles, but we'll see how it does. Before the 35 turn Surpass heads up the ramp, let's lead off by saying I am in there hot swapping these motors. Like, I don't turn anything off. I just pull the motor out. So I pulled the red wire out, and it was resting in my palm, and I pulled the black wire out, and I electrocuted myself just the tiniest little bit. Like, it was just a little tickle in the hand there. So, I mean, they are juiced. I guess that's drag brake. They are juiced, even if it's not moving. So, in the test to see if this was the same, basically the same exact motor as the Apex, just in a different turn variety, it absolutely is. It is also reverse turn. It's reverse rotation. So the wiring is conventional. So to all the dyslexic TRX4 owners out there, untie. You can grab one of these and pop it right in there. I would still, at this point, I mean, pre-testing it, hasn't hit the ramp yet, I would still recommend the Trail Master. This motor is definitely slow. It's got some good low speed. Why am I having to bump onto the ramp? There we go. It's got low speed, and I'll give it that. And it is holding at 26. So the Surpass in 35 turn variant appears to have about the same amount of torque as the Trail Master. Holds at 26. Forward movement at 42. Yeah. So this motor feels very similar to the Apex unsurprisingly. Why wouldn't it? It's the same motor with a different turn count. So it feels on the rocks. Now, it's a 35 turn, and the low speed is there. I think at this point, we've cut it so fine at this point. Its drag brake is on par with the Trail Master. I mean, we're getting full hold with the weight of the body. Little tiny rollback. It is quite smooth. It's very controllable. It's got a decent bump. Obviously not quite as good as a 27. I can say right now, obviously there's a speed hit, but if I were choosing between the two, you know, same but different company names, between the 27 and the 35, it's the 35. The loss of speed is not significant enough. There's more torque, there's better control, better low speed. Yeah, I'd take the 35 over the 27 all day. 35's a little noisier, a little whinier. And it's going to take a bit of a minute to get around the 220. So let's wrap it around that and then wrap it up. I guess that's about right. Moving from the 27 turn to the 35 turn, 47.27 seconds, which is right about a walking pace, like a brisk walking pace. So, I mean, that's a selling point to some. So you could trail it, because it could definitely get geared up a little bit. Try the hold here. Yeah. It just holds. Let's try nose down if I can get up to the top without getting hooked up. Yeah, you can see the dust coming off the tires. It's drying out here a lot. There's a lot of dust on slick rock. I did not spray it down. I probably should have. So it's got a lot of dust moved onto it from yesterday's testing and today's. Oh, gotta make sure to find that. Oh no! That's the only way to get this thing to land upside down, is to drive it with the body off. Because the van body is filled with magic. So, little forward roll. Yeah, I couldn't ask for better hold than that. This guy's running, I think 58% front weight. Well, in the last, I haven't scaled it. I've made some changes and I haven't scaled it. So it's between 55 and 58% front weight. And if it'll hold nose down that well, that's enough drag brake for me. So let's get her back inside and talk it down. At the end of the day, there were no failures here. All these motors did well. I would say the Titan did the least well, but it has a lot going against it. It's the only of these four that is used. Like I say, this came out of my Defender, so I used it for a little while before the ridiculous Axe 550 system went in it. They all had to run without their torque sleeves, and I don't know how big of an impact that would make, particularly with how thin, like you can see there, and then look at one of these guys. The torque sleeve is almost non-existent on the Holmes. It's almost as if it's just a place to hold the sticker. Whereas these guys, they've got some beefy, thick sleeves on them. Also, we were splitting the hairs so fine. I think the fact that the Trail Master has bearings in it actually came into play. Like these two, which are the same motor with different names on their sleeves, they're the same thing. This is just a 35 and this is a 27. But, I mean, we can tell if we look at the end bells. It's the same motor. These came out of the same building and were probably soldered by the same person. So, of the four, I have to give it to the Trail Master just because how smooth it is. It's got pop and punch, but it's very smooth. It's got bearings, so it runs a little quieter. It runs a little cooler. It's in the same, I mean, it's almost double the cost of what you can get a Titan for, but it's definitely worth it. If I had to buy just one of the four, it's Trailmaster Sport all the way. I wouldn't even consider it. That said, I think in something like a TRX4, I think this guy could be great. I think this guy could be pretty good. That's pretty much the order I would put him in right there. There was a winner today. Trailmaster Sport, 35 turn in this 550, then the 27 turn, and then the Titan. Like I say, nothing wrong with a Titan, but it's just it's got too much RPM to it. And this is coming from the guy that just recently tested Tamiya Sport Tuned 23 turn, which is significantly faster than this, but felt more controllable. And to me, a big part of it is control. This motor was the most controllable, even up against this 35. And that amount of, the amount of speed, top end speed that you're losing going to the 35 is too much for me. I mean, the difference around the 220 foot was around 15 seconds. So this is like 1/3 faster. I'll take that speed because if I get near the same level of controllability, but with that additional speed, I'll take it. Too much speed, not enough speed, butter zone just right. So a clear winner today, folks. Trailmaster Sport 550 27 turn. Again, not surprisingly. As I mentioned, episode 3 will have the 5 poles and the oddball, the Power Wheels motor, which should be interesting. I'm kind of feeling like it's going to be like this, but that's just guessing. So that's episode 2 in the books, and the Vanimal and I definitely thank you for watching.